Oh, here's a little jug.
Oh, just hold. Okay, I don't have a pocket right now. Just hold on to it. All right. Actually, can you hold this? Hold on, let me check in. Oh, there it is.
Rolana's the executive director.
Nice to meet you,
Thank you
AB.
for opening up the space.
AB.
I have all the agendas.
Yeah. Nice to meet you too. Your name?
How you doing?
Nice to meet you. Oh, this guy.
What's up?
Hey, how you doing?
Which one was the organizer? So we're really lucky. We have Carmen here, and she has experience. She's actually worked collaborating with the Symbiosis Festival when they had their festival out at their Midway. And she brought some resources that we've been looking over, but I really want to give her a chance to share because she has a lot of experience.
And I think you want to trade places with him because we're going to be
Oh,
on the
I
live
see.
feed and we're the main speakers.
Okay.
Let's see.
Okay, so yeah, I basically just wanted it to be like, so one person beside the panel is speaking at a time that we have a designated place, but if we feel that doesn't work, I mean, it's fine.
Like as a facilitator or?
No, just someone who wants to make comments.
And we have an agenda here, so this is what we'll go by to keep it clean too.
Okay.
So before we do the opening prayer, I'll do a welcoming acknowledgement. I wanted to thank everybody for coming out tonight and being able to take part in this really important conversation. This is a conversation that's been going on for several years, even before my time. And it's a conversation that needs to be had. So I'm really glad that Dr. A.B. Wilkinson was willing to moderate. He's with the Department of History for UNLV. And that David Barragan, also known as Olmeca, who's an adjunct faculty in the Interdisciplinary Gender and Ethnic Studies Department, is also able to lend his voice as he teaches Latinx Studies. And that Ian Gonzalez, he's an organizer for the Las Vegas Tribal Festival, which has since changed his name, but he'll have time to speak his part about that, the name change, and the things that are going on. I have to be very honest, I was feeling a little, and still just feeling very unraveled about this, and even talking about these issues of appropriation. And it's a hurtful topic, it's a heavy topic, but it's something that needs to be talked about. And I think that one of the reasons why I wanted to open this forum and even take responsibility for talking about this forum is, myself maybe being a bad friend. I've been a friend of Ian Gonzalez's for several years now. And like him and many other friends that I have, there's, times I'm just like, oh, bless his heart, and brush it under the rug. Or, he'll do that or she'll do that over there. I'm going to walk this way. I don't have the words, or I don't know how to address it. You know what? Just that's happening. People are going to do what they want to do, whatever. And now here we are. There's a whole festival that is going through, and we'll go into the issues of, why, myself and many people in the community feel that this festival is wrong, or what's wrong about it. But let's dive into why we feel that these things are wrong, and how we feel about them. To keep this, on time, we do have an agenda, and for those people coming in, I'll just pass this.
We're just gonna keep making the circle bigger as people come.
Okay. Oh, thank you, Mercedes, and
If
thank you.
you guys can scoot over.
But
Over here.
But first and foremost, I wanted to, welcome everybody to the Las Vegas Indian Center, and thanking the Las Vegas Indian Center for opening its doors, as they do, for community conversations, and to, do a lot of the things that they do that's like attached to culture and bringing people together. So right now we're on the land of the Southern Paiute people. The Southern Paiute people are the indigenous people of this area, and I myself am a member of the Las Vegas Paiute tribe. Oh, he's on. And we have other Paiute tribal members that are trickling in now. And I wanted to give that acknowledgement and to recognize this, because I think it's far too often that people don't recognize that this is the land. And even with the title of the festival, people are asking, oh, that's the Las Vegas Tribal Festival, the Paiute tribe, right? No, it is not. But we get mistaken for this. Even years ago when we all stood together for Standing Rock, like, oh, the Las Vegas tribe is hosting this, a drum circle, this thing, it's a Las Vegas tribe. No, it's something else, but that name has been co-opted for so long, and again, this has been something I've just been brushing off, but I think we're at a head now where we really need to address these things and really talk about that. And maybe to kind of give us some air about it is we're going to start with an opening prayer. We're fortunate to have the director of the Las Vegas Indian Center, his name is Rulan Pete, to offer some kind words to bring us all together in a good way. Thank you.
Dear Creator, as we come forward tonight, we're thankful for the opportunity which we have to come together as a community, to be able to discuss issues that may be at hand, but we ask that we'll be able to do that with respect and kindness towards each other. We're thankful for the many people that have the drive and the excitement to be able to come in and discuss their beliefs, their opinions. We're thankful for the many people that have contributed to what we're doing here, and we're thankful for the opportunity which we have to be able to share our ideas and what we need to do going forward. We ask that your spirit will be with us, that we will treat each other with respect and kindness, and to be able to learn from each other and to be able to share the things that are needed to help us to be able to grow together. Once again, we're thankful for the opportunity which we have to gather and appreciate this. Amen.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much. And I'll let Dr. A.B. Wilkinson introduce himself and let people know what his position is here.
Hi, I'm A.B., Dr. Wilkinson. For full disclosure, I am Fawn's partner, and we've had many conversations about this, just cultural appropriation and other surrounding issues. I myself do not have tribal membership. I am of African, Native American, and European descent. My father's African American and Native American. My mother's French, Irish, Norwegian, and German. Some of those histories have been erased on my father's side because of colonization, and that's what I study. I studied the colonial period and early U.S. history, and those are the classes I teach at UNLV here. And I write on people of African and Native American and European descent, people of mixed ancestry. Really I see my job just as a moderator or facilitator, and I just really ask that people just have respect. As Rulan said in the prayer, really if we just all respect each other and try to listen and have some flexibility in our thinking, I think we'll make some progress here, and I'm just excited to help with this dialogue. So yeah, just be respectful. I know people have some hotter feelings around this, and I think that expressing emotions is good, but let's try to remember that we're directing what we say at people as well too. So both with how we conduct ourselves, not saying to hold things back, but just to do it in a respectful manner. And that's about it. Thanks.
Thank you. So just a little bit of background for the people who are joining us on the live feed and tuning in from the state of Nevada, from the Nevada Indian Commission, all the way to our brothers and sisters that are in Peru and New Zealand and Indian country. This is going to serve as a forum, as maybe a starting place to have these kind of discussions and to really, it's going to be hard. I'm going to say that right now. This is a really tough conversation, and there's a part of me that's still a little bit, I'm shaking a bit because of the hurtful nature of it and because of the not being understood. But at the same time, I'm happy that I am able to sit here and to say my words and hopefully be understood. And also to listen to you and your team, to, of course, hear your point of view too. And that this will serve as, maybe this will be like a draft for other people to get together in other communities to have these tough conversations. I was listening to this art podcast, the Art People, and Justin Favela, and I'm sorry, but her name escapes me at the moment. They were having a conversation about, really calling people out. And calling people out is not working. It has not worked for a long time, but what happens when we call in? What happens when we call in the people who have hurt us? What happens when we, challenge them with dialogue? And, being able to have these conversations. Oh, with Julia Mejia, Afro-Latina agitator and activist and badass. So on the meeting agenda, I have some of the works cited of the different things that I'm going to be touching on for my statement. So that you can also go back and look at those different podcasts, articles, books, and educate yourself more and beyond this. And over this past week, in my Las Vegas class, I didn't fully introduce myself. I'm a student at UNLV. I'm in the Master of Fine Arts program. And besides being a tribal member, I do art, and I express myself through art. And it is a room full of artists that we're with now, whether they're performing artists, visual artists, what have you. So a lot of this I'm drawing on is also going to be art and art related.
Take your good chair.
I'll just take the class. I'll just take it.
So a little background, again, for the people who are tuning in for the live feed. On Friday, January 24th, an event was made public entitled the Las Vegas Tribal Gathering. The event raised several red flags with the indigenous people that reside in Las Vegas. The issues include, but are not limited to New Age fraud, prayers for profit, non-natives in red face, and other acts of cultural appropriation. Several community members spoke up publicly and privately that include members of the Las Vegas Paiute Tribe, the Las Vegas Tribe, the Native American Student Association of UNLV, educators and members of various tribes and community leaders. The forum is created to address these issues, and organizers of Las Vegas Tribal Gathering and community leaders and others will be present for this discussion. So when I initially saw the posting about it, I saw on the website, because the website was taken down just for the week, but then it was, re-upped again today. And I'm seeing different acts, and we're looking into, who the performers were and, what is their background, what these teachings were, and there was offerings of shamanistic kind of practices, and it really pulled me back to this writing by Christine Novus, and I'm just going to cite one section of it. And she also cites Lisa Aldred, the author of Plastic Shamans and AstroTurf Sundances. And it's summarized by why cultural co-option, aka plastic shamanism, and the increasing commercialization of Native American religion in the New Age market displaces, distorts, marginalizes, and belittles Native American histories and contemporary Native American identities. She writes, although the New Age spiritualists identify themselves as countercultural, their uncritical ideas about commercialization and marketing practices appear to have been shaped by the larger capitalist economy. Aldred further states, moreover, their imperialistically nostalgic fetishization fetishization of Native American spirituality hinders any recognition of their own historical and social complicity in the oppression of indigenous peoples. Basically, co-opters are imperialist colonizers that are unabashedly distorting the Native American identity through their own spiritual quest. And I spoke with Christine this week as well, and she's Native American, and I'm sorry, I don't have her tribe like listed right here from my notes. I can't remember everything. But I really think for Seeding Sovereignty, it's definitely another resource to go to learn more about this and how people feel about these issues. Besides that, and being on Native American lands, I had a lot of trouble with it even being named the Las Vegas Tribal, gathering, because it's only not even a few miles away from my tribe's, our Paiute colony, and we're the Las Vegas tribe. We are. So for somebody to even co-opt that name or that word and call themselves Las Vegas Tribal Gathering was really infuriating to me. But also, I was infuriating myself because I did not address the Las Vegas Tribe drum circle, and I have not in several years. I'm trying to see people as allies, and it's part of my own self-growth to be open to other people and other cultures. And I also like to reflect and be very open and candid about my place as I sit as a Native American woman trying to reclaim my own indigeneity. When I was a teenager, I'm 41 now, but when I was a teenager, I had an R-Skins, I'm not going to say the racial slur here, but I had a shirt and I thought, oh, there's a feather on it, I'm represented, that's great, and but I didn't know about the complexities of that, or even the history of it and how it means, the proof of Indian kill. Nor did I fully understand the stereotypes, even as I myself wore a Pocahontas costume. It's my shame, but I put it out there because I want other people to be able to speak up and really own that too. And it hurts me to think about it, when I think about my place where I am in education now, my place within my tribe, my community. But I too have done these really awful things, but I've learned. And people have talked to me and pulled me aside, and I've taken time to do the work and to read about the histories and learn about it and to grow myself. And I've been very thankful for other tribal members and family members who have been open to say, oh, Fawn, you don't do that. I mean, it wasn't even so a couple of years ago that I was cleaning eagle feathers and I Instagrammed the photo. I thought it was a beautiful thing. And this was like 6-something years ago. And, I was showing people like, oh, this is how you do it. And I was so excited to finally learn, to finally be taught. And my family didn't correct me until a couple years later. And they're just like, oh, we don't want to, divert you. We see you're learning more about your culture. And, we didn't want to, say something to kind of pull you back. And I was like, no, you need to say something. I want to listen to these things. And I just want to be very open about that and my journey. And that not everybody is perfect. And not everybody is going to be, perfect here. I mean, what makes, a native anyways? If we're really thinking about this, what is an Indian? And I've taken time to really do research about this. And I think, I brought the book on Playing Indian. And this book by Philip J. Deloria has a lot of insight into it and how Americans feel about their identity, and how even ourselves as tribal members, we're really trying to reclaim our identity. And when we're trying so hard and working so long and going and spending hours in the libraries, hours at home, multiple forums, multiple conversations, sitting with our elders and really doing this work, and for someone to swoop in and say, oh, here's a tribal fest, and here's, some practices, and you pay $30, $80 at the door, it's a slap in the face, and it's really hurtful to me, because I've worked really hard to really claim who I am, and I've gone through all of these different times of really trying to, figure out my place and myself as a leader, and people are looking up to me to know all the answers. And I'm still learning what these are. So for this gathering to be brought about, it hurts me, and that's what I just wanted to say. I have more to say within the statements, But I really wanted to note a really wise young woman. Her name is Janet Patty from the Dene Nation. And she stated, that she didn't want to be honored as people claim to honor her or honor the culture. She wants to be heard. She wants to be listened to. And I thank all of you for being here today to listen to me.
I'm the son of Adolfo Ernesto Gonzalez. I'm accompanied by my friends, my family, what I call my tribe. We share the same dialect, we share the same beliefs, we share the same ceremonies, and I respect all tribes and all people. I come to you with my honor and my gratitude. In this day and age of attacks from marginalized peoples, I'm here to say I'm sorry, and I see what's going on. And I'm here to open up the dialogue for all of us. The meeting was called by Fawn Douglas, and I give her my respect. However, some claims that were against me in the beginning, when it got posted on Facebook, were not being portrayed correctly. I know most of you in this room knows what it means to be misunderstood and treated unfairly. Well, there was comments of me being treated unfairly for what I said. I do not want to create separation. And by saying that, I here to admit my wrongs and address the claims.
A lot more people coming
We
in.
created a container for facilitators to teach their own culture. The reason I called it Las Vegas Travel Gathering was because the facilitators that were coming are all from their tribes around the world, including Africa and Australia, different tribes. Their education on their indigenous cultures is what they will be teaching. I'm not here to teach other people's culture. Although what people refer to me as Mesoamerican, I do recognize my indigenous blood before the Spanish conquest in 1442. I do recognize my Irish blood, although I don't know much, I really have to. I am a healer, but I do not charge for healings. If the facilitators charge for their healings, that's their culture appropriation. If the people in this room are truly upset and tired of being mistreated, I'm so sorry for that. I am still learning as well. Believe me, it was never my intent to disrespect or hurt anyone's feelings. I must admit, when I first thought of this event, I was going to contact the local tribe here, which would have been fun because we've been friends for a couple of years now. And however, not getting around to that is an excuse, and for that I take full responsibility. I've changed the name of the event, not only just to honor, but just because I don't feel it's right within myself to name it that. I had to change many things, domain names, flyers, and much more. I'm not someone made of money, most of us aren't, and all this planning had to take time. The teachers and the elders that are traveling far and wide, people that are leaving their families to come to this place in Nevada, where I was born and raised, to come together as one people, as one nation. I've received very, very hateful and despairing comments on social media. I have been bashed and marginalized in my efforts. Several of you have written out falsehoods concerning me and my event. This is why I'm here right now today to answer any questions you may have. The event that follows is the admission fee and the fees that participate in various workshops such as breathwork, yoga, ecstatic dance, sound healing, as well as meditation and much more. I have invested a lot of time, a lot of money, and effort in securing this venue for the artists that are involved in the festival. Live music to painters to all different artists. We will never be charging for prayer, never. The symbol that I use is the Hunab Ku. It is the ancient Mayan symbol that represents supreme God or one being. Hunab meaning one state, Ku meaning God. It encompasses all opposites in the universe and unites them as one, male and female, dark and light, yin and yang, conscious and unconscious, internal and external. The list goes on. I believe the Hunab Ku acts as a bridge that connects these opposites. The Hunab Ku is a testament to the belief that can unite the opposing forces. Unhabku is a symbol for ancient future, connecting the past and future as one in the present. Much of this was based on the calendrical system that was partly shared with other Mesoamerican groups, in which they preferred to a tool capable of recording important historical and astronomical information. Most Maya inscriptions have been interpreted as calendrical inscriptions. This image is the image of my God. I honor my ancestors the way you honor yours. By me removing this symbol is me removing my culture and my people. I will honor all indigenous roots, for I am Mesoamerican. This is all of our physical ancestors, both human, animal, reptile, fish, shellfish, plants, as well as consciousness, which organize from raw material form, a whirling disk into the stars and planets and solar systems. It is also known as the galactic butterfly. Butterflies are seen as ancestors returning for a visit to physicality. Wearing one of these symbols is very as powerful as it broadcasts actively to our consciousness. Before I pass this on, I would like to leave you with one thing, and it's Ho'oponopono, which is a practice of a Hawaiian tradition of forgiveness. It's just 4 simple steps, and I want to speak it from my heart, which is, I'm sorry, thank you, please forgive me, and I love you.
Thank you. Thank you. We'll turn next to Omeka.
Greetings, everyone. How's everyone doing?
Good.
My name is Omeka. I teach at UNLV. I'm also a performing artist. So, to me, it's a very there's an irony here. You know, there's like reading between the lines and silver linings and all of this stuff here that's happening right now because I'm an artist, but also because I'm Native American. And so being a performing artist and knowing what it takes to be part of that world in order to succeed, and then being part of ancestry and rooted and having foundation in my culture, which is the polar opposite, right? So there's always like these conflicting ideas. The first thing I want to say before anything is to apologize to you all, to the Paiute community, and to the center itself, because we could be gathering like this in order to build something and to support the things that are happening at the center, but instead we're asking you yet another thing, which is to open up the space to solve issues. And so I want to make sure that that's noted, and that we remember that the space is here not just to, again, utilizing indigenous cultures and identity and our openness to solve issues that should have been resolved outside of this space. And we should have been in this space to try to build something, to try to create something here, and try to support the community however we could. So that's also the way that we can actually see how we're actually imposing, you know, and not solving anything. So I wanted to start with, it's like a story that an elder told me in Mexico. Because we rolled up in Mexico. I'm from LA. I'm as hood as it gets. I teach at the university, but I'm a street kid. You know, that I try to get that out of my system when I was in college, but I was influencing other people more than they were influencing me. We organized a lot in LA around indigenous cultures, predominantly because the migration patterns that come from Latin America, a lot of times, or after 1994, a lot of them were from indigenous communities. And so we went from being Tepehuane, which is what I am, from the state of Durango, which is on the northern part of Mexico, Zapotec, Mixteco, Tzotzil, Celtal, peoples, to being undocumented, or to being Mexican, or to being dirty immigrants. So at every step, the more north we got, the more identity was extracted and taken away from us. And so by the time a lot of youngsters got to LA with their families speaking their native language first, and then Spanish, and then English, they were going through an identity crisis like you wouldn't believe, including myself. And so what we ended up doing was just opening up spaces so that we can have youngsters be themselves fully. And what ended up happening there was that you would have elders talk down to the kids, telling them what it was to be indigenous. This is what it is to be indigenous. Meanwhile, the kids are listening to hip hop, and now they're feeling guilty that they're listening to hip hop. And so there's like, you have to be one thing and you have to be another. And what that told us is that indigenous culture a lot of times is being looked at as if it doesn't progress. Like as if it's stuck in one era and that's it. And if you're not that, then you're not indigenous. But at the same time, this elder shared this story with me, and he said, I said, look, things are getting better. Like, I feel like things are gradually getting better. And he said, not verbatim, right? These are not the exact words. Like, this is oral tradition, right? So, like, we interpret as best we can. I said, things are getting better. Then he said, but when we see the door cracked open, it's still not an invitation for you to come in. And if it is an invitation for you to come in, it's not an invitation for you to interrupt what I'm showing you in this home, or for you to reinterpret what you learned in this home once you leave. Now, if you like what I showed you, it's okay, but it's not an invitation to come into my home uninvited. This is when things go wrong. People will become upset, and they're going to want to do their own thing. Or they're so happy and they're so excited about the things that they learned in that house that they want to go back as much as they can. And so that now they want to feel this every day and they want to share it with the world. They want to share that thing that they learned, that they were invited to. They want to share it with everybody outside of that house. The elder looked at me and he said, is that what you want to do? And I said, no, I just want to be able to tell people, like these youngsters, that they're also indigenous. And he asked, how do you want to do that? And I said, well, I want to show them. I want to show them. And he says, well, how do you know what it's like to be indigenous? Well, from what you taught me. And then he said, how do you know that I know what it's like to be indigenous? Well, then I'm assuming that you know, because you're teaching me. He said, well, that's where we go wrong. Because what you're trying to bring into my house now, it's a colonial mentality. Native traditions are the antithesis of colonization. And what you're trying to do right now is talk to me about indigenous culture through a colonial perspective. Our culture now exists as a way to resist colonialism, not to be a part of it. That's what the elder told me. What I took from that was, Omeka, shut up. Don't try to tell people about what it is to be indigenous. Be indigenous in your everyday practice and who you are as an individual. Share with people the experiences that you've had, but never take the responsibility of opening up a space to try to teach people something that you don't know about. Number 2, my brother, you're saying you're Mesoamerican, right? I could also say I'm Mesoamerican, right? Because I come from Latin America. The Unapu, which is something that I studied, but I've also studied is the wrong word, because the way I wanted to learn about our indigeneity is by speaking to elders, not by reading them in books, right? One of the things that we do understand about the Unapu, though, is that, are you familiar with Jose Arguelles? So Jose Arguelles, for those of you who don't know who he is, he's somebody that used the Unapu in 1972 to promote a book that he was writing about New Ageism. Okay, So the unaku as it stands, as the actual symbol, does exist in our culture, in our traditions. But the one that he used is actually from Oaxaca. And in Oaxaca, for the majority of the people who are there are Mixteco and Zapotec. And so, although there is a pan-indigeneity that we can talk about in Latin America, now, today, what we're trying to do is not have the conversation about pan-indigeneity, but for individuals to try to find exactly where they're coming from. One of the reasons why we used pan-indigeneity back in the days, especially in the 60s, was because, number one, we didn't have access that we have now today to information, right? But the second one, it was a romantic view about indigenous identity for the Chicano and the Chicana culture in the Southwest, because we're being called white, and then we're being called Mexican, and then they use the term Chicanery to denote our identity. And so it was used as a way to bring people together, this pan-indigeneity. But it didn't necessarily mean that we were indigenous people, as it were. It just meant that we were refusing to be like part of the colonial identity, right? By being whiteness. And so then we used indigenous culture as a way to say, this is where we come from. These are the roots that we're choosing to be a part of. Just as a stepping step, as a first step, to denounce colonial thinking in our communities, right? So when I heard you read the what Unaku represented, a lot of that is actually New Age language, right? That to somebody like me no longer means a lot. Back in the day, the Unaku meant everything to me because I wasn't able to really find where I was coming from, right? But as soon as I started talking to my family, to my parents, when I started talking to my uncle, and he told me actually where our families were migrating from, and it was forced migration that caused us to move, right? My grandpa moved from Durango to the state of Jalisco because there was land conflict, right? The Tepehuan people from Durango lost a lot of land to the Mexican government. And so ranchers started getting a lot of the property rights, and they started killing indigenous people in the area that I'm from, the Tepehuan people. And so I started following the migration pattern. I got lucky, and I'm privileged to understand my history. A lot of us don't understand our history. It doesn't mean that we're not indigenous people. It just means that we don't know where we're from, because there is a thing called the diaspora of indigenous people. But Gwyneth Paltrow, y'all know who she is? Have y'all heard of the goop or the gop culture? Okay, well that's another thing that's happening today, right? Where so she took mushrooms, and now she takes upper class people to Mexico to do mushrooms for alternative healing, okay? And what that tells me right away, first I go like, come on now, right? And I go, come on now, because most of my people can't even cross back to Mexico because they ain't got papers. You feel me? So that's hurtful for me to hear that somebody like Gwyneth Paltrow, who could just wants to cure. Oh, I got alternative medicine. Oh, go to Mexico and come back. No problem. So she takes people with shamans, right? And I did some research about that because I was like, wow. I was like, I know what I have to do to go to an elder. I first have to get accepted into the community so then I could use that medicine and be well protected with the elders and the rest of the community. I know what ceremony is because I've done ceremony. And I know what steps you have to take in order to do that. Well, it turns out that the shaman that she was talking about are white middle-aged people, or older people, that went and lived in the village where these poor people live, and they taught them these lessons, and now they're the connectors because they're in Mexico. So now she takes all these upper class people to these new shaman, these new age shaman, to learn the ways of the mushroom, the way that it was taught to them by elders in the indigenous community and these traditions. What happens here is that we're starting to understand that indigenous people today are not past tense. and we also have knowledge, but that knowledge is up to us to share. And we're not subjects, but we're actually living, breathing communities that exist today. And before we engage in our journey to try and understand ourselves as indigenous people, we have to be humble enough and grounded enough to open ourselves and ask questions first to indigenous people who are indigenous people who continue to have this struggle. And I think that's what happened in this whole festival thing. Like, the process that y'all took might have not been the most healing one for people who are already hurting. So,
Thank you.
yeah.
Thank you. And then we have Yoshabel Shea speaking next. I know her as Yoshi, but
Like the dinosaur.
just learned the other day, Fawn says, no, her name's actually not Yoshi, but
It's
go
okay.
ahead,
You can call
introduce
me
yourself and be sure.
So I'm not as eloquent. I'm a nervous wreck right now, so I'm just
okay.
okay. This whole situation has brought up a lot of reflection of identity, and it's also been a humbling experience too, to recognize where I'm at in my process as someone who is searching for the indigenous history of my people. So through this process, I actually did a lot of research. So my main focus in this whole group is to explain a little more about the Hunapku and how I stumbled upon it. So in the generic term, I am Mesoamerican as well. I started my journey years back to figure out where my family comes from, where my people come from. And sadly, there aren't any scriptures. There's really nothing that I can go and fall back on. So I'm trying to pick the pieces from my family and pick the pieces from books, and just from people in the community here, and then those from different parts of Latin America, to really understand where the history came from and how we are as a community. And through that, the Hunapku is such a famous symbol that is an automatic symbol that one attaches to. Like, oh, that's Mesoamerican, yep. And so I think it's natural to be excited about it. Later I found out the history of it, which actually turned me down and turned me off of the idea of what it meant. And also through what my philosophy is about living. So I did some research, and I'm gonna just write what I wrote. So, hello. First, I'd like to say thank you to Fawn and the Native community for having me be part of this discussion tonight. My name is Yoshabel Shea. I was born and raised in Las Vegas. My family comes from a tiny country called El Salvador in Central America. Due to the Spanish conquest, our indigenous stories have been destroyed and erased. However, it is assumed that my ancestors come from the Maya Nawa. My husband is Dene, and my son, who is 5 months old, carries maize blood in his veins. Oh, you printed it?
Yes.
I love it. Yeah, because they're on, I need bifocals now. Okay. Though I cannot claim a tribe, I truly admire and respect all tribal nations and that have fought to keep their sacred traditions alive. I and many others are frustrated that the Las Vegas tribal gathering would use these traditions for propaganda. The primary concern I have is the logo design that was used in marketing. My bachelor's degree is in fine art, specialization in graphic design. I was trained to understand how to merge art and translate it to the community for attraction. To me, art is its own language and can speak much more than words. When Fawn posted the website of the event, I felt cold chills down my spine out of anger due to the usage of the Hunapku. Though the idea of using this symbol comes from a holistic and positive approach, I was reminded of the articles I read on how this signage was the opposite for the Mayas. Hunapku is a very controversial symbol. There have been articles done by anthropologists and historians criticizing that the symbol is not Maya. According to Steve Beck, a Mayanist, or a researcher, in the 2008 article, The Origin of the Hunapku Symbol Means One God in Yucatec Mayan Language, and was the creator of the universe and equivalent to Itzamna, but Hunapku has no representation in the Mayan codices. Modern Mayan scholars have confirmed that Hunapku did not exist as a Mayan deity in prehistoric era. According to these researchers, the idea of oneness granted to Hunapku is to make him similar to the Christian God and thus to bring Mayans close to monotheistic religion, which was the aim of the missionaries in the post-Spanish Mayan world. This Christian missionary brought a new light on religion and faith to the community that nowadays are positive practices. However, the priests violently tried to eradicate the Mayan belief during the Spanish colonial era, according to Roberto Rodriguez in Ishim, a Maize-based philosophy. Rodriguez writes, Europeans first learned indigenous languages. They understood, mistranslated, butchered, and then demonized them. With missionary zeal, they also destroyed thousands of idols and all the native books they could get their hands on. I use these resources to support my argument that the usage of the Hunapku for this group festival was carelessly handled. I say carelessly because if the founders of the festival put more time in researching the symbols, they would in the flyers, they would find the Hunapku has a dark history to it. To claim it is Maya and glorify something that revisits a tragic genocide the Maya went through is a hard pill to swallow. Sure, the finding on the debate is modest, but this is why we have this group here, to explore and figure out how emotions come from this. In the new millennia, everything is readily accessible, so much so that we forget to see the details of the bigger picture. I understand that the group's vision and how we are in the era of change. So this idea of consciousness, this idea of coming together, I get that and I see that. Though the Maya's vision wasn't to glamorize their spiritual practice or make profit out of their spiritual beliefs. They were the architects, the astronomers, and the mathematicians of the southern Mexica Peninsula and upper parts of Central America. It breaks my heart to see my ancestors being exploited for a movement that is equivalent to what occurred in the 1500s. The misinterpretation, mistranslation, and misrepresentation. And I was the one who responded to you about, with the Wikipedia, and obviously no one should reference to the Wikipedia. However, I put it upon myself to do more research because this is something very important to me. Going back into history because I have no history, trying to bring it into light, this is kind of a reminder of what was taken from us. And so, the fear that I have ultimately is that I understand this image or this imagery, this iconography is something very meaningful to you. But to those who know the history of it, it's actually very painful. And it does frustrate me and it does remind me of the struggles that my people went through. And sadly, it's even hard to find my people. We don't have a language anymore. And so those are things to be mindful of, especially from an artistic point of view, from a graphic designer point of view. I'll share my beans too, or spread my beans out that, I do holistic things as well. I don't ask for money, I ask for tacos. Like, I'm not someone who's gonna be like, hey, give me $100 for, I don't even know what Reiki is, but whatever. Someone has to tell me what it is. And all of that is beautiful. Spirituality is beautiful, coming to center and understanding that. But it's a matter of respecting it. It's not something, I think it's becoming it's desensitized now. The Om symbol, that's now on t-shirts. And I'm not even from that area of the country, but I'm sure people would be offended if you were to take that and be like, how'd you get that? I got that for like $10 somewhere, and it's something so meaningful to them. Or even the flower of life, even that type of symbol, that symbology is something that means more to other people than just a flyer and so forth. And so I see where you're coming from. I know that this isn't out of malice. There's a lot of things that just need to, I guess, be cleared up. And what I've learned in in my years of academia is we need to research as much as possible. Everybody thinks they're an expert, especially on social media and especially on the internet. I'm not an expert. No one is an expert. We're all still growing, and even if we are well trained in something, we still have an opportunity to grow. And so we're not trying to say, we're not trying to bash you, just trying to be open to research before you do something. And my sister's a lawyer. She's always pushed me to do that as much as possible because I'd always get in trouble. So, and this is kind of the consequences that come out of that. So it's just, and who's to say I'm wrong or right? I don't know. But if there's scholarly research on it, that from an academia point of view, I follow that. So just kind of being more attentive to what is it that you're trying to do. If it is indigenous based, how can you create your own logo, create your own flyer, create something that you're not taking from a culture? And so that's just on my behalf.
Okay, thank you very much, Yoshi. So next we have Mercedes Marcos Kraus, and she's going to be speaking.
And one thing that I do want to say, when I said I was thinking, I am all about connection and, people coming together and dance and music and enjoying and getting to know one another. Why is this is upsetting me so much? It's because, we have a group in our society that is actively against us, wanting to take away our sovereignty, discriminatory towards us. We have a set that it comes to a point of willful ignorance where we still have race-based mascots in our schools. We would not have stereotypical images of any other racial group in our schools here in the United States, but you will find them in about every state in the United States. We have erasure in our history books. I'm a teacher. Not this year yet, but for the past 2 years, I've cried in my classroom because of our curriculum. This is especially hurtful to me because from people who say that they're about healing and connection, when I see the youth, those young people that were engaging with you on Facebook, I've known them since they're tiny. We learned our culture together in this urban setting through dance and learning our history as a community together, as babies. Okay, reclaiming our culture, like she was saying. 1/3 of all of our children were forcefully removed from their homes by way of adoption and foster. It was forced assimilation because we should have gone with our families if our parents put us up for adoption. And I hear history of from the 1500s and further. The history I'm talking about is my mother, Fawn's mother. I tell an experience of one day when we were going out to Moapa, and I was in a circle with my daughters and my best friend and her daughter, and I was, when you get that and you feel the universe coming together, just the vibration around you, and I was thinking, we're not supposed to be here right now, but we're here. Forced assimilation and genocide to fight for our language. I don't have my language. I've had to fight for my culture. So for me, one of the most hurtful things is seeing pictures of the artists from your festival wearing breastplates, headdresses, and items from my culture, using words from my language that I don't have or didn't have and had to rediscover, and playing dress up. That's what it is to me in my culture that was ripped away from me and my children, that I carried through my life, about at least 2/3 of my life, a hole inside of me that I had to reconnect in order to fill this up. So it is extremely, extremely hurtful. So I have a statement here, and again, it's not my statement, but I am Lakota. I'm a enrolled member of the Oglala Lakota Nation and a descendant of the Santee Nation. This is a statement written by Wilmer Stampede Milson, who's Oglala Lakota, traditional spiritual leader, Lakota cultural instructor from Oglala Lakota College, Pine Ridge, South Dakota. Also put together by Daryl Standing Out. He's Sikanju Lakota, president, Center for Spirit, San Francisco, California, Pine Ridge, South Dakota. Phyllis Swifthawk, Kulikasa Lakota. Tio, say it for me. Tio Spahi. Tio Spahi. From Wongu. Okay, his statement is as follows. Whereas the conveners of an ongoing series of comprehensive forums on the abuse and exploitation of Lakota spirituality, and whereas we represent the recognized traditional spiritual leaders, traditional elders, and grassroots advocates of the Lakota people, and whereas for too long we have suffered the unspeakable indignity of having our most precious Lakota ceremonies and spiritual practices desecrated, mocked, and abused by non-Indian quote-unquote wannabes, hucksters, cultists, commercial profiteers, and self-styled New Age shamans and their followers. And whereas with horror and outrage, we see this disgraceful expropriation of our sacred Lakota traditions has reached epidemic proportions in urban areas throughout the country. Whereas our precious sacred pipe is being desecrated through the sale of stone pipes at flea markets, powwows, and New Age retail stores. And whereas pseudo-religious corporations have formed a charge for people for money for admission to phony sweat lodges and Vision Quest programs. And whereas sacrilegious sun dances for non-Indians are being conducted by charlatans and cult leaders who promote abominable and obscene imitations of our sacred Lakota sun dance rites. And whereas non-Indians have organized themselves into imitation tribes, assigning themselves make-believe Indian names to facilitate their wholesale expropriation and commercialization of our Lakota traditions. And whereas academic disciplines have sprung up at colleges and universities, institutionalizing the sacrilegious imitation of our spiritual practices by students and instructors under the guise of educational programs in shamanism. And whereas non-Indian charlatans and wannabes are selling books that promote the systemic colonization of our Lakota spirituality, and whereas the television and film industry continues to saturate the entertainment media with vulgar, sensationalist, and grossly distorted representations of Lakota spirituality and culture, which reinforce the public's negative stereotyping of Indian people, and which gravely impair the self-esteem of our children. And whereas individuals and groups involved in the New Age movement, and in the men's movement, and in neo-paganism cults, and in shamanism workshops, have all exploited the spiritual traditions of our Lakota people by imitating our ceremonial ways and mixing such imitation rituals with non-Indian occult practices in an offensive and harmful pseudo-religious hodgepodge. Whereas the absurd public posturing of this scandalous assortment of pseudo-Indian charlatans, wannabes, commercial profiteers, cultists, and New Age shamans comprises a momentous obstacle in the struggle of traditional Lakota people for adequate public appraisal of the legitimate political, legal, and spiritual needs of the real Lakota people. And whereas this exponential exploitation of our Lakota spiritual traditions requires that we take immediate action to defend our most precious Lakota spirituality from further contamination, desecration, and abuse. Therefore, we resolve as follows. We hereby and henceforth declare war against all persons who persist in exploiting, abusing, and misrepresenting the sacred traditions and spiritual practices of our Lakota, Dakota, and Nakota people. We call upon all our Lakota, Nakota, and Dakota brothers and sisters from reservations, reserves, and traditional communities in the United States and Canada to actively and vocally oppose this alarming takeover and systemic destruction of our sacred traditions. We urge our people to coordinate with their tribal members living in urban areas to identify instances in which our sacred traditions are being abused, and then to resist this abuse, utilizing whatever specific tactics are necessary and sufficient. For example, demonstrations, boycotts, press conferences, and acts of direct intervention. We especially urge our Lakota, Dakota, and Nakota people to take action to prevent our own people from contributing to and enabling the abuse of our sacred ceremonies and spiritual practices by outsiders. For, as we all know, there are certain ones among our own people who are prostituting our spiritual ways for their own selfish gain, with no regard for spiritual well-being of people as a whole. We assert a posture of zero tolerance for any white man shaman who arises from within our own communities to authorize the expropriation of our ceremonial ways by non-Indians. All such plastic medicine men are enemies of the Lakota, Nakota, and Dakota people. We urge traditional people, tribal leaders, and government councils of all other Indian nations to join us in calling for an immediate end to this rampant exploitation of our respective American Indian sacred traditions by issuing statements denouncing such abuse. For it is not the Lakota, Nakota, and Dakota people alone whose spiritual practices are being systemically violated by non-Indians. We urge all our Indian brothers and sisters to act decisively and boldly in our present campaign to end the destruction of our sacred traditions, keeping in mind our highest duty as Indian people to preserve the purity of our precious traditions for our future generations, so that our children and our children's children will survive and prosper in the sacred manner intended for each of our respective peoples by our Creator. It ends the statement.
Can I answer that?
Yeah, I think we're gonna open it up now. Let me just I'll quickly try to summarize some main points. One, I think there are, everyone expressed the idea of trying to reclaim identity and culture, and I think that I'll use I statements when I'm saying something that's an I statement. I think that it's clear that colonization has stripped many of us of our culture or cultures, right? And everyone, I don't see this as an us versus them thing on this point. Everyone is trying to reclaim, right? What they see as their culture, right? There's definitely some disagreement over some things. I think over the word tribe, but I hear that, I'm saying what I'm hearing Ian say is that he takes responsibility for possibly misappropriating and change anything that I'm saying and I get wrong, please. But I'm hearing that Ian takes responsibility for misappropriating the word tribe and has changed that. I hear his apology and that he has come to this place with honor and respect for people in this room. I'm also hearing him say, just for those who came in late, that he does not charge for healings or ceremony. He said that very explicitly and very clearly, and that the fees that were posted for this event were for the cost of the event. He never charges for prayer, just to repeat that. And that he works to honor the ancestors, just I think, as most of us in this room do. So I just want to make some of those things clear. Other things, so, we can get into the word tribe. It's a word that definitely carries racial connotations and has been used in different ways by various people, and I think that's a place for discussion. The Hunaku, was talked about. Some people see it in a positive way and use that imagery around that. Some people, have looked at it as having more of a dark history that's attached to colonization. And the other thing that's been brought up is dress, and people dressing up in regalia, or plain dress up, were some of the words that were used by people. Where, I don't know, I didn't see the image, I'll just say that, I've been busy this week. If someone has the image, but people have said that it's plain red face, or I don't know if there was a headdress or not. I think that's a point that we definitely need to address and discuss, as people do feel that it's an appropriation of Lakota culture, very directly. And so I think that's something I think that we can open up for response. I would just say that let's have one person at a time speak. But I do want people to be heard, and let's listen as well. Is there anything you'd like to add?
Yes, and just for respecting this
I'm gonna
space, and we're definitely going to get to you because for the people who are following along on the live feed, the artist in question who was in red face and with the breastplate is here with us tonight, and I want to make sure that we are going to respect each other, because I think it's going to strike a very angry nerve in many people, but we also have this opportunity to talk with this person and give him a chance to speak. He's sitting here tonight, but because this is, our space here at the Las Vegas Indian Center, I want to give the floor to any of the elders who would like to speak first, and then give the time to our matriarchs.
I would love to say something.
Thank you.
So,
please say your name and your affiliations.
my name is Mitzi Patterson. I'm an enrolled member of Bishop Paiute Tribe. The one thing that I'd like to point out, Amy, when you talked about his apology tonight, the thing that struck me odd was he was apologizing in reference to a Hawaiian traditional saying. So I still don't think he understands if he's using a Hawaiian reference to apologize instead of an apology from himself. He's still using another tribal condition to express himself. And to me, I wouldn't even use another culture's expression, to express my apology to a group of people that I'm therefore, because of accusations of cultural appropriation.
Right.
So I just don't think it's understood. Still.
Can I speak on that?
Thank you.
You want to have
No
elders
Elders
first?
first.
And then matriarchs?
Elders first.
Okay. Are there any other elders who would like to speak?
Matriarchs.
When I considered elder, I'm 48 years old. English is my third language. I'm a Nasta woman, Nawasiwat. My first language is Nahuatl. I always get nervous. I find less so connected. Because English is my third language. So many people get confused me on Spanish or Latino. And I guess I'm here because it's a lot of things to learn. It's a lot we have to show. And I can connect with everyone. If this one is like I dream in this place. All the people that they are here, they need to be here. And we are here for a big reason. It's not a small reason. I hope you guys understand me, my English. I hope you guys are speaking and understanding me. At the same time, forgiveness, but recovering our history, understanding who we are. For me, it was being a big journey. And I still carry so much pain. It is. I'm an Indian. And actually, it hurts me when I see people I get written. I'm undocumented at the same time. I'm here because exactly sometimes I'm speaking to the Spanish community too. when they dress up as Indian. My mom, they don't speak Spanish. My parents, they don't speak Spanish, they don't speak English. And I see there's so many people, they're making a lot of money, a lot of profit using their culture. Dressing up as Aztec, because they think it's just wearing the Aztec dress and make them Aztec. Teach them the reality. Aztec, we are the indigenous people of America. We are the original people. We are the people, they call us so many bad names. For me, it took a while to learn to get here. I leave my place when I was 7 years old. I had to go through my own life. So many abuse, since emotional, physical. And I don't understand now the media plays, they media and the commercializations, they call Indians, they not alive. Me trying to find my place, where I belong. I'm American Indian, I'm Indian from the other country. I'm Nahuatl, I'm Siwak, Nani Siwak, Nani Kamatinawak. Who I am, and I don't have a papers, I'm undocumented. Who I am. And when we came to the big profit, we stepped, and this is the big issue. It comes with, this is a big thing. People who are now engaged, one of them, they are Native Americans, indigenous kids. They don't have the right. They are, we sometimes we're making money with some money, but nobody talk about this big issue. So, trying to be here, it for me really hard sometimes because it comes like, I understand probably it's sometimes like we feel pain, anger, because we feel like we don't have like, a strong, sometimes we don't support because there's so many, the media play because commercialization, we go and buy it. And we go in because we want to teach our kids who we are, who I am, human beings, understanding each other, sharing this world. And your event is trying to connect the people, bring the elders. We got a youth from there. As I'm home care, I do home care. I'm a nurse. I study nurse. The ways I raised, it wasn't about money. I usually go to pick up coffee beans. So it's an exchange healing. My mom is a healer. I'm a healer. I'm an energy healer, and I don't care for that because I like to give an exchange. Exchanging is the best way to understand, and we can get more because when you charge, there's so many people that cannot afford it, and they left them behind. We left them behind, and it's like something we are here to help each other, not to. Because you don't have it, you're not allowed to stay here. Because it had happened to me. I wish I could be a lawyer, I wish I could be a doctor. I had to work at the same time. Work and pay for my own school. It's same here, I want to do more. But I feel sometimes like you don't have papers, you don't have allowed to go to this school. You're not allowed to have a scholarship. Because I'm an Indian, because I don't have documents. My parents, my ancestors, my dad, they don't even get registered because the colonization from the people from the Spanish and the church, everything is the Western thing, the medicine they can do. And they make us to buy. Now we're buying the land, our own land. We are not free. We're buying our own land. No home, I'm homeless. I don't have money to pay rent, and I'm homeless. I'm here to tell you, and we had to learn much from old elders. A lot, and we had to speak our native languages, recovering our native language. Why we lost it? I'm still speak a little bit of my native language because it's the same. Everything is in English or Spanish. There's no in an Aztec language. This traduction that we do in the Mexican government, the same thing. It's a controlling thing. They don't let us sometimes even to talk. There's an event they organize the Latino community, Hispanicas. They dress up because you're an Aztec. No, teach the reality. You're an Aztec. Why you are Aztec? Where you come from? Why you're not? Like speak a big tribe from North to South America. They're trying to disappear. They're still Mayan people. They speak Mayan, but they are in the corner. The government came and took their lands and they're not going to speak. And it's still happening. So I'm here to support all my trans sisters, my trans brothers and sisters. We all are brothers and sisters. And I'm sorry, like I'm saying, I'm speaking to I'm feeling the way that I feel, the way I understand Douglas. I know sometimes I'm saying like probably I don't have the highest English because it's my third language.
Do not apologize for that.
But I wish so many people could understand more Nahuatl. That's in my journey. I'm still learning more my language because the only way I can communicate with my dad and my mom is only a Nahuatl. So I know it's still hard because it's hard even to write it. It's hard even how to read it. And I'm telling that way. I hope with something good come to stay together and help each other. We all are brothers and sisters. Doesn't matter my color. So many people they call me India. I still receive in Facebook from people from Cuba, pinche India. Yeah, there's still people they call me. They say pinche India. Go back to your place. Go back to Mexico. And when people they say go back to Mexico, I'm a Native American. What do you say back to Mexico? This is our ancestor land.
Right.
Speaking the truth, some people they don't want. Oh, you are a bad woman, and no, I'm telling the truth. We're human beings. What comes the world from illegal aliens? Who are the first dreamers? Well, are dreamers, right? So we want to better life forever, in sharing, healing. The healing is just to be free. Pray. We shouldn't charge for any prayer. Or create or give us everything, right? So I'm a nurse and I look to that. I help people, I cook and take care of elders, people they're sick. If they can pay, yes. If you're not, that's okay. Give me a taco, like you say. Give me a place where to sleep.
I'll clean your
I can clean, I can do everything. Like, think hard, but we have to help each other. And keep learning to keep alive our nature.
Thank you.
Your name?
Minerva,
Minerva,
but
okay.
I'm in the process to change my native name, Xochitl Citlali.
Okay.
Xochitl, it means flower, and Citlali is a star.
Thank
It's
you.
really beautiful. I think it's really beautiful, people sharing from their language and such. And I know that this forum could definitely go a lot longer. Just a show of hands, who is speaking tonight for open discussion?
Are you asking who's gonna stay?
So are there, well, who would like to speak? I think she's asking. But, I wanna let this brother respond to directly. I don't wanna put off other people who would like to say something, but I think we do need to have the time for dialogue.
I think that's a really good idea, that he speaks and the people respond, because it is his imagery, the red face, the playing Indian, that a lot of the community is really upset about.
Okay, and then can people say their names before, and I'll say after they speak too, just so we can speak to people and not say that guy or that woman, things like that. So, yeah.
My name is Napoleon Reyes, and my great-grandfather is Seneca, and I resonate much to it. And when I was younger, I was with this daughter who her father was a medicine man, so they accepted me, And I feel like the things that you see in those pictures are those things that I feel like they're still my family, and they have given me those things. And I went through training in those things. And I know that you see it as just a guy putting stuff on and all this kind of stuff, but those pictures are taken after work. When I do work, so it's not like just me putting that on and then going, oh, look at me, I never do that. As far as just using it for that. But also, I really appreciate you, and I feel ashamed. I want to tell you all that. And I'm sorry, and that won't happen again, because I didn't know it was such a big thing. I thought it was just white guys with war bonnets that was doing wrong. You know, I didn't know I was doing wrong. And your story tell me about that, because it sounds like exactly what I went through. They brought me into their home. They did teach me these things. So I just want to say I'm sorry for hurting you. I'm sorry for hurting you. And I know that you feel like I'm your enemy, but I'm not your enemy. I want to be your servant. And if there's anything I can do to help, whatever you need to be done to make it better, you can call on me. That is all I have to say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I say something?
Yeah, anybody want to respond?
Yeah, real quick, brother, to you. It's I would invite you too to get more connected with the local community here. If there are Lakota and then that is the family that you're a part of.
No, it's Seneca.
Seneca,
But I
okay.
was trained by Dene. So,
Okay.
you know, it's
But
all
it's
mixed
about-
up, and I'm not in a tribe. I feel like I'm an orphan, really.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
And maybe some of the
I'm
elders
also
here,
I'm Filipino too, so it's like I'm just trying to figure out what I am.
brother, and that's okay, and that's okay, and that's okay.
And I
And
didn't
that
know all
journey
this was going to happen. I didn't know that I was hurting. And it's my ignorance. I'm so sorry.
and that journey is okay, brother. And it's
Like, it
it's
took a
gonna
lot of
be
courage
it's
for me
gonna
to
be
come here. I
painful.
knew that it was going to be like this, you know?
But you're amongst family here too, is what I'm saying. And so there's elders here, and you know, like I said, elders are always going to be the ones that are going to help us find a path. And in that path, we may not like it, but we got to respect it because it's about tradition. Our books in Latino America and Abya Yala, what we call Abya Yala, and what some people might call Pachamama, books were burned. You know, so we have our elders. Our elders are the ones that help us. So, you know, it's I'm happy that you said what you said.
I would very much love to hear a response from Ian directly about the sacred Hawaiian practice that you referenced earlier in your plea for forgiveness, if you will. I'm curious what that's my mom. I'm Taylor Patterson. I'm an enrolled member of the Bishop Haiu tribe as well. And it's very striking to me that you would reference somebody else's practice that is very sacred to them in your kind of reference. So can you expand on that a little more?
Yes,
Or? Yes, please.
What is your mother's name?
That's Mitzi.
Mitzi.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for what you said as well. That's exactly what crossed my mind as well. So I gave 3 thank yous and I'm sorries and forgivenesses. 2 of them were within my heart and from my own words that I was taught. And I made sure I looked in almost everybody's eyes I can. There's a lot of people in this room. The last one was a Hawaiian tradition. I was taught by my Hawaiian brother, Knuckle Bear. And he taught me that. And I'm spreading that medicine as well within that.
Can I respond?
Yeah.
So my point is you're here on a discussion about cultural appropriation.
Yes.
So in your apologies to the community in regards to that, you point out a Hawaiian sacred tradition of apology. So how is that?
Whether or not you were educated in that.
I understand.
I don't mean to
One
make
person
up
at a
for
time,
you all.
one person at a time.
I just,
I understand what your
Yeah.
mother's saying.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mitzi, so much. And let me answer that.
Sure.
It's because,
Please.
like brother said right here, I'm still trying to find where I'm from. I'm still trying to find my language that was taken from my people. The same people that cut the hair and put us into schools and everything. I'm still trying to find that within myself. I don't know. So the only thing closest to me is what I'm taught. And that's why I'm saying it to you, because that's my heart.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'll just point out, you know, this is a difficult point right here, I think. Aina Kamu, a native Hawaiian brother of mine, I was just in Hawaii a couple months ago, and where I learned practices that, you know, that he's telling me too, you can take the aloha with you and share these things. So I think sometimes it is difficult, you know, to know when, you know, someone has taught us something that might not necessarily be from our culture.
Thank you. That's the point I really would like to get across.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Please.
My name is Sabrina Redfoot. I'm a member of the Shiblets Band. I'm a Mojave Paiute. I would just like to say, don't feel attacked. Don't take no hard feelings. It's very upstanding of you to be here and listen to this, because it's called constructive criticism. Plus, it's called teaching, and it's this cultural appropriation needs to be addressed in all tribes, because all tribes are guilty of it, of bringing other tribes' practices into their own, and dressing as them and stuff. The Paiute tribes do and stuff. So you're not the only one that is in the wrong. Many of us are, and nobody's perfect. But it's good that you're here to learn, and in this forum of people that are willing to. I don't want to talk to you. I could talk mean, but I don't want to, because I really look at you guys as upstanding young men. Yes, you did wrong, but life is a journey, and we learn as we go. So that's where I'm glad you're here, and I really appreciate it. I'm sorry, I don't remember your name. Mercedes. Yeah, the reading of the letter from the Lakotas. That's in my heart. That really is pretty much what I believe, and in what I was taught by my elders, because I was raised. I'm 50-something years old, so I'm not super old, but I was raised down with my grandma off and on in the Shibbutz Reservation, no electricity, no running water and stuff like that. So we had nothing really to do but sit and sometimes just listen to the older people. But I remember her, my grandmother, and others stating to us, and I'm pretty sure it's stated in other tribes, the Creator gave us things for our different tribes. And we're not to share all of it with people, with the outsiders. They're talking about the white people, the people that, and even other tribes. We're not supposed to share certain things. We're supposed to keep it within our people. Sacred, ceremonial things, like it was stated in the speech you read, the letter you read, is the sweats and all that stuff. A lot of tribes do it, and it's not our ways. And the teachings of the medicinal plants and stuff like that, those are within certain tribes. Those are sacred things. We shouldn't be teaching that to everybody. But I remember my grandmother and other older people stating, you can share some, don't share it all, because they will exploit it, and that's where we are. So I just wanted to get that out, that I would like a copy of that if you could, or so I can share it with my people also.
It's actually on the back of your agenda. There's a list of works that I've cited, and the name of that was the Declaration of War Against Exploiters of Lakota Spirituality.
Okay. In your name?
Sabrina Redfoot.
Okay, thanks so much, Sabrina.
Thank you for letting me speak.
Yeah, I think, and we'll go next over here. I think that this is, what to share and what not to share. These are definitely, there are differences within different traditions. And we are holding on to things because I think there are fears, right, because of the history of exploitation, but there's also a history of sharing. For example, the ghost dance, which came from Wovoka, Northern Paiute, went to the Lakota and other groups 100 or more years ago. You want to go on that?
Yeah, I want to say though, everything was specific with that and came through.
But they're sharing. My point is that some things were shared between tribes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
That's
or no?
like tribal leaders, tribal
it's shared.
Yeah.
Okay. Again, I'm not saying that everything. My words before that were not. Some things are to be shared. Some things are not to be shared. But in the past, things have been shared. And I'm saying
certain conditions.
Yes, of course.
Not for profit.
Again, that's not what I'm saying. My point is that some things are shared.
Now let's all attack AB.
And that, well, I think this is an important point because there's a point of contention, right? And so some things are, as the elder said here, as Sabrina said, some things are to be shared, some things are not, right? Sweats are different between some groups, right? There's just not a monolithic culture, right? But cultures also do share.
So I think that, you know, there is some area there, I think we have to understand why there's a fear of sharing at all, right? Because of the history of exploitation. Okay, and then we'll go next over here.
I wanted to give my turn to her. Oh, no,
I am indigenous, not of this land, and of course I always acknowledge that I'm standing on private land. Whenever I speak. I actually am totally supporting what's being said here because when you're talking about renting, there's this fine line, and again, when you use indigenous, it is actually really this broad brush because I am indigenous, but not of this land. And even though I don't belong on this land, I do stand on Papatūānuku Mama Earth, so these issues still matter. In my culture, so again, I support, we're one generation of using our language. I understand that here, there's multiple generations, even content. We're one generation, and there's still anger and outrage. So when others use language that does not belong to them, and I'm one generation, there is anger because we fought for it. Because our parents were punished for speaking it. Because we lost it, so when others commercialize it, it hurts us deeply to our heart. I was raised in my culture, many are not, and I acknowledge that. And that is a deep loss, and it injures me when I know that. Because I'm so grateful that I was raised in it. But there's gaps missing because that's part of colonization. These connections that we have that are missing. What I'm sharing with you is in our culture, you said Hawaiian, so I was listening very carefully. We are still a strong culture. If you had done something with our culture, the way that we would address that traditionally would not be so gracious. So my point is, you are in a gracious environment where you are being treated kindly. Traditionally, from my culture, depending on the person in front of you, they will not be gracious. And culturally, that person is in the right. So my gift to you is tread carefully, because when you are using these broad brushes, I cannot speak about Native American culture. I don't know it. I can't speak about mine, but I can tell you that again, if that line had been crossed, is depending who saw it and who addressed it, they would not have been so gracious. So again, because I started culturally, I'll end culturally, is whenever we speak, I acknowledge where I'm from, as we always follow that up with the song. We have to be careful. All missions, we have to be careful because it is still fresh. Our wounds are still fresh. Yep. So when we, and I'm not saying I'm right, but I'm right. I would never go and use another person's language without permission first. I would never, and I'll joke about it because not my proudest moment. Went to my first powwow, saw what's the plate, and I said to my wonderful friends, "Is like, is it inappropriate? Because I could rock that shit with a black dress. It's inappropriate, and I wouldn't do it, but I really could. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Yes, out of respect.
Yeah, there's things that I could have, but it injures other people, and thus I would never do it. But again, my gift to you is tread carefully.
Thank you so
because
much.
certain cultures, even if they gift it to you,
Right.
because when you use these word tribal, we are tribal.
Right.
Well, how you're okay with one is not okay with another, and you might have got an okay from them, but it's not an okay from me. And again, I can speak for us. We're not that generous. We're not that gracious.
And thank you. I actually want to follow up on that, and I think it's really important to read the comments, because I had a couple of people submit comments that really wanted to be here. I just have a small statement because, like Rada has said, you know, these things are far-reaching, and we don't know how far-reaching these things are. But my friends in Peru, after, you know, today the website went up and there's notes of Pachamama, she wanted me to read her comment.
Can I ask that maybe we post that and give the time to people that are here?
Actually, that sounds good. I will post that and make that public.
It's a short paragraph, let's read it.
Okay.
We're going ahead. People want to do it, okay.
Okay, hello, Fawn. Okay. I want to briefly comment that here in Peru, I have been observing a new form of cultural appropriation of our stories and struggles. It is very incredible to try to believe that a foreigner wants to represent the natives when she never experienced the blows of a difficult situation, and less when she does not speak the local language. Nowadays, modern marketing pushes people to look for news stories without leaving a true voice and authentic representation of the natives. The superficiality of just seeking personal recognition does not leave changes in the mentality of the Andean people, but facilities that only reinforce the lack of collective self-awareness. There is no real support while a foreigner only wants to be the leader of an indigenous group. There will be more the conformism of the natives when they say they come to help. This matter is being experienced today in our land. This is very extend probably. I mean, this have to be a longer explanation. I'm sorry for some language barriers. I appreciate what you are doing in your land, Fawn, and you get my support. And these, and is it appropriate to use, like when I did ask her about the language use of Pachamama, and she said, is that appropriate to use, ? Does it show an inclusion of all people? I have read this better, and I think it is not appropriate. In the Andean spirituality, they never had the idea of Christ. It is a wrong concept, and I also think that if they believed they could do better by adopting and modifying ancestral knowledge, then they never understood the originality and the essence of ancestral cultures. This is nothing more than a very superficial new fashion. This reminds me again of people who only adapt to the superficialities of the modern world and do not include those who, in essence, represent their inspiration. I think this will lead to the lack of identification with the original and lost recognition of true culture. And this is from Shandira Arque from Peru, Tawantin Suyu. And please apologize with my mispronunciation of that. Thank you.
Can I just comment regarding your journey as far as finding identity? I'm just going to speak on my behalf. It is very easy when one is lost in an identity to capture something and think that it's theirs. So there's nothing wrong with that. It's part of the process, and I've been that, and I still do that, and I'm still learning and relearning and, you know, kind of punishing myself. Oh, I shouldn't have done that. I should have thought of it this way. And ultimately, when it comes to identity crisis, it's because it's a rejection of something. So if you feel that, it's a matter of accepting where you are and work within that home community. For example, my struggle was always being rejected as a Latina, but I knew I had something deeper, and I knew I was a Latina, but I didn't know what that deepness was until I was fascinated with the Mayas. And I always knew that was part of my blood, but because no one knows, we've all lost our stories. So how can I even claim that? And I'm still on that journey, and I can relate to you, and I empathize with you. But I'm working within my scope, because that's where my root is. And I have also worked through the yogic philosophy, through the Hinduism, through the Eastern philosophy, and I understand that. And I've concluded that where I need to work is within what my history is. Because from my history, I could then speak and protect and support what was sacred, not something that I think it is me. And that's all part of the process. So this whole situation, though it is frustrating, it's an opportunity of growth, an opportunity of educating yourself, and really just stop and reflect. Well, if I don't know what my identity is, then who am I? And I start from there. What is my core belief? Spirituality. Okay. Well, where does that come in my culture? I'm not sure if you're Mexican or El Salvador or Guatemala or Central American, but then you look deeper into what that country and land would look like and keep exploring that. And in the Philippines as well, I mean, there's beautiful tribal stuff there that is so gorgeous. And I have a very close Filipina friend that is exploring her own language that was taken away by the Spanish conquest. So it was, yeah, Spain. Who wants to go to Spain? I'm just kidding. But you know, and I think there's something to do with that. It's something to recognize that there is pain there. There is definite pain, and the pain that you felt or you feel as part as something that might have been of rejection or felt of rejection. That is what we feel as far as you rejecting what we've been trying to work for our life. So it's normal, but allow yourself to be in that ick and allow yourself to explore where could I start from and where do I need to, versus I'm gonna go over here and I'm gonna take that, or I'm gonna go over here and I'm gonna take that. That's not you. You need to ask, what are you?
We go here and then around a bit. Yeah, I know. Did you want to? I know that you gave up your time or your. Did you want to go now?
Yeah.
Okay.
My name is Jasmine, and I just want to try to keep this as brief as possible because I feel that first and foremost, we want to listen to the party people, and I just want to say that you, especially you saying that you're Mesoamerican, so I can speak on that. Mi pueblo es Zapotitlán. I was born in that pueblo. My family is from that pueblo, and you guys talk a lot about exploring and roots, and like she said, this is my mom, this is me, this is my grandfather. My grandfather was killed for being indigenous in Mexico, you know, or speaking his native tongue, you know. We carry a lot of pain from what you see as beautiful, you know, like inspiring. When I see my people dance, I see the blood, the sweat, and the tears that it took to make sure that that is still a reality for me. When I show people, when I tell people that yo soy Nahua, people want to see me in Aztec dress.
Yes.
My dances are not Aztec dress at all. Our culture is completely separate. And now what I love to tell people about Mexico is like it is so diverse. It is so diverse, like, and it's complex.
Yes.
Because only the people that are really from that pueblo know their reality and they know their history. And there are things that we don't want to fucking tell you because you don't deserve to know that. Because let me tell you something too. Mestizo. A lot of people get offended, like that's you calling us colonizers and this and that. It's a racial reality in Mexico.
Yeah.
And it's one that carries a lot of fucking privilege.
Yeah.
A lot of fucking privilege. You know? My grandfather was killed by a mestizo that was darker than him. Because my grandfather, cuando lo veían ahí en la ciudad, he was dressed like an Indio. Because he was fucking proud. He had money, you know, he could get land. And he was proud of that, you know? When people saw that, how dare this Indio, this pinche Indio have more than I do. You know, and that's the reality. When I left Mexico, I was 8 and I came here. And I grew up knowing that we were different, but not exactly knowing how. Or trying to kind of like, why are other people's Mexican culture so different from my own, you know? And talking to my mom was so hard because my mom, and this is what I think, this is why I say you guys are coming from a place of privilege, so much privilege, that you can just take this thing and be like, well, this is what it means. Try to talk to my mom about our pueblo, she just shuts up. You know, it's like, it is so fucking hard. There's so much pain, and there's really messed up things too that even still now we we have to struggle constantly because we're still in the process of colonization. We still have mestizos coming into our pueblo and extracting and taking. Oh, you guys can do this? Oh, qué bonito, me lo voy a llevar para allá y voy a hacer dinero. You know, it's just like, and even me, I have to like say that I was ignorant. You know, coming here, I didn't know about Pai people. It took me a long time, you know, and it's like a lot of times when you're immigrant, it doesn't just mean automatically that that land is part of you because you're just human, you know. And it's like, to an extent, yeah, but you have to come with a lot of respect, most of all, just to kind of try to humble yourself. Because, yeah, you guys are trying to find identity, but it's like, we're just trying to sometimes survive. And I do, in my own, like, standing, I realize I have a lot of privilege, you know, and I'm part of American culture, and I have to recognize that, you know. We left and we survived, but my reality is very different from the women that stayed in my pueblo. And I have to go back there with a lot of respect, because before I didn't know that, you know. I'd come and be like, you know, my mom would hear about stuff, and you did this and that, and she was very ashamed, but it's because I didn't grow there. So like, I myself am, it's like, you know, like other people here, even though you could say that you're indigenous, you're a part of pueblo, a lot of us still are learning so much, you know. So for you to just be like very broad, you know, Mesoamerica, Azteca, Nahua, you know, my Nahua is not her Nahua, you know, we're very different, you know. Other than trade, we have very little to do with the Mexica.
Yep.
You know, our cultures are very different. And like I said, when I show people like our dances and stuff, they're like, what is that, you know? That's my people.
Thank you, Jasmine, thank you. I'll go to Sammy next, and we'll bring it around here.
My name is Samuel Jake Anderson. I'm a member of the Las Vegas Paiute tribe. I descend from Southern Paiutes, both in here in Nevada as well as Utah. And what you guys said was very enlightening. I appreciate that you guys have came here to discuss the issues. Something I've heard, what you guys were pretty upset about the word tribal as well as commercialization. So I have a question for you guys. Me as a child, I used to dance at powwows, and at powwows, they reward natives with money. When at the age of 14, I told my parents I'm not dancing anymore. I was not taught to dance for profit, for money, yet that still goes on. Some powwows give away thousands of dollars if for any category you're dancing for drumming, for drum contests and whatnot. So, you know, I understand these guys don't necessarily understand, are not knowledgeable about our traditions, but me as a native, I feel like we're sending a mixed message. We're doing it for, I'm like, when I was a child, kids, I mean, some of these people live off money that they won at powwows. That's how they traveled, that's how they got around, and you know, that's how they put food on the table. So, in my opinion, I think it's our responsibility to tell them, like, that's not how we do it. And you know, I saw, you know, one of my sisters told my niece in Utah, she was like, we don't dance for money. And I'm like, that almost brought me to tears because I don't see that often. When I was dancing, and even when I'm not, when I'm at powwows, I see natives crying because they didn't win. And I think it's our responsibility to tell people that's not why we're dancing. We need to explain to our kids what the jingles mean on the jingle dress. What, you know, what we're dancing this way because of this. This is what it means. I think we're neglecting to do that. You know, I also heard about the you know, the mascots. I went to the junior high school where the mascot was a Native American. They even had a painting of it. You know, that is a serious issue. It's one that's being addressed. It's just being addressed in the Capitol in Utah by some of the elected officials in the tribes there. So I guess I would just ask this question: Has that been addressed here in Nevada? Because I'm not too educated as much as Fawn is in this area, and I'm still learning. But it's, you know, just that's my question to you, Fawn. Is our tribe Or Moapa, any of them, are they addressing it in the Capitol with our elected officials?
I think it would be good for Mercedes maybe to take that question. And the one about money for powwows, I don't know if anyone wants to take that, but I just want to try to get as many people in as possible.
Definitely, and on the issues of powwows, we could be here for another 2 hours,
Yeah.
and we have 5 minutes.
Yeah.
We have 5 minutes to really just kind of circle back and definitely talk about mascots here. Mercedes Cross Marcos, she's been dealing with this and working with the school district on these issues for several years. And she's also going to segue over to Carmen, who's worked with different music festivals and helping to educate them and sit down with them as well. And after that, we could all, get something to eat too. Ian and Mercedes are kind enough to pick up some food for everybody to eat, so we could all, kind of refresh ourselves. But I think we'll close it with that, and we could still continue this conversation a little bit. But I also want to give respect to the Indian Center, who's opened their doors till 7:30.
Okay, so it is something that has been addressed. Again, we could talk about it for a long time. One way everyone here can be supportive of the community, there's a meeting next Thursday at the Moapa tribal offices for Indian education. You could share your concerns about the mascot there. Please contact me. Anyone else who wants to talk about it further, we are on that. I want to thank you for being so humble, all of you.
You changed my life. This is going to change my whole life.
I do want to tell you, I am not a hard person. I'm a first grade teacher, I'm a mom, but I've dealt with other people who just have dug their heels in, and that's kind of where I was coming from, because I talk softly, you want people to listen a little louder, and you caught me at my part where I'm talking loudly, and I appreciate
It happened
you.
perfectly.
Yeah.
My guide said that it would be perfect.
And so I'm thinking now that you guys, it's gonna be a struggle for you if you wanna do your part in organize or, communicating with your community, because there are others I told you that we've dealt with before. And this would be a good segue over to Carmen. Like you guys, she has some materials that she's brought. She has experience with this, so I would like to turn it over to her. And thank you for your humility. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
I'd like to say something real quick before we turn it over. Hamataki, talking Ashkia Matomie. My name is Crazy Bokulabera. I come from the Lakota, the South Dakota, the Cheyenne River Sioux tribe. My name is Nathan Bison, and I don't wanna bash on you guys, but the reason why I came tonight is because I was very upset about what's going on with our cultures, and I think what it comes down to is respect. Respect for the sacredness of our grandfathers that died and shed blood. Hundreds of thousands of our people have been annihilated. For us to preserve our culture and our language and our sacred items. Myself, I would not go wear Aztec medallion, or even with the tribes in Europe, Scottish, Irish, they got kilts. I wouldn't wear their items. I'm sure it would offend them, or any other tribes, But there are elders like my grandfather, Ted Bison. He went to jail. Him and Crow Dog and others, so they could have, we as Native American can practice our rights to practice our spirituality and our culture, our ceremonies. If they didn't go to jail, we wouldn't be able to even practice these things. So these things are sacred to us. So I'm not trying to bash you guys. I think it's more about education, communication. It's more about people that have had enough, with this, what's going on with misappropriation, headdresses, it's a huge issue out there, and I don't think we own it as far as anybody could do anything they want. We're in America, and we're free to do whatever we want. But I do feel that this education is pointing out the respect issue. You know, and I thank you guys for apologizing or, you know, telling us how you feel and where you're coming from. You know, because that's educated me in a way in broadening my perspective about people that might not know where they're coming from or lost or whatever. You know, so I'm really glad to be here. I'm glad you guys came here and expressed yourself, and from everybody that came here tonight. You know, it's just, this is like, we should do it again next week.
Next Thursday we have events here at Alden Moapa. The Thursday after that, give me your contact info. Let's build community in those positive ways, like Mr. Maka was saying before. Let's do it.
Yeah, but see, through this communication, education, you know, it's helped me to let go of things myself. You know, anger about this issue. You know, it helps me to see it a different eye, different view. So, thank you for the time.
Thank you.
So this is for the event organizers. I don't know how many people you have on your team, so I just brought a bunch.
Thank you so much. Is this for us to take?
Yes.
Oh, thank you
Yes.
so much. I appreciate it.
And I appreciate you accepting them.
Thank you so much.
I wrote down my comments. I don't normally read from paper, but I got a concussion this week, so I'm having some memory problems, so forgive me. My name is Carmen Gonzalez. I am Navajo and unknown Mexican, possibly Aztec, I'm told, but I don't know that part of my history. My mom was very matriarchal. I came here this evening in the spirit of healing and collaboration. I haven't come to cause anyone to feel shame or to add fuel to the fire of conflict. It is my sincere hope that this meeting will be the first in a process of working together to bring a circle of healing to fruition for this community. I want to thank the event organizers for taking the time to come and be with us this evening. Thank you for being willing to listen to the heartfelt words that have been spoken here tonight. And I want to thank the Native community and those who came out in support of the Native community. Thank you for being willing to have a conversation that is difficult to have. I know that these discussions stir up a lot of emotions, trauma, conflicted personal histories, and unresolved suffering. And it takes trust to come into a space like this and share our deep personal grievances with each other. And it takes courage to listen. So thank you to everyone for being here tonight. We've already learned a lot this evening about cultural appropriation in general, so I'm not going to delve into that any more than we already have. The speakers who came forward to speak on these topics are much more qualified than I am to address them. I'm here to offer my viewpoint tonight as a Native woman and as a peacemaker. I have had the opportunity to work with another festival on Native engagement, and I'm hoping that some things I've learned along the way can be useful in moving forward from here. I appreciate is that the right page? Yeah, I appreciate the amazing transformations and connections that have come from my participation at some pretty amazing festivals. Symbiosis. There's nothing more wonderful than being under the stars with friends. I think one was sitting over there. Dancing, connecting, and creating a beautiful temporary space that comes and goes like clouds in the sky. And I'll tell you something about myself. I don't like conflict. So when I saw this event information that was posted, and when I saw the responses from those in the Native community who I know, I almost wanted to just ignore it. Drama. But then I remembered how it was that I came to be a festival girl, and it all came back to conflict. I was invited to sit in some peacemaking circles at a festival that took place at Pyramid Lake on tribal lands. Starhawk and several friends of mine, and myself held space at that festival to allow for conversations to take place in a way that honored the views and requests of the Native community as much as was possible in a short period of time. Like in this instance, that festival train was 20 miles down the track before the depth of the concerns in the Native community became known. So not long before the event took place, I and a group of those in the Native community started to get together in dialogue with the event organizers. I won't go into the whole story about all of it right now, but I will say that I am grateful on so many levels for every bit of that experience. I witnessed so much goodness and so much healing from the conversations we had in those talking circles. So here's the point. You can choose to use your event as a way to build trust and begin processes of conversations and healing, or you can choose to further erode the trust with a local Native community by choosing not to engage where there are concerns. By the evidence I see when I look around this room and by those who are present here tonight, I can see that there is a genuine wish to support a space of greater awareness for the benefit of the entire community. I've brought along a guide that was published by a dear friend of mine, Dixie Pauline, as a gift for those who would like to learn more about better practices for Indigenous engagement in event production. So it's a pretty specific document about it, because this is happening everywhere. Yes. This isn't happening just here. This, I don't know what to call it. Collision. Pain is being brought up, and I think it's happening for a reason. It's happening because it's time for us to heal, all of us. So, as a festival that is desiring to uplift people and offer a space for creative community, connection, and personal and spiritual growth, it's an even greater obligation on your shoulders as event organizers to engage in a meaningful and mindful collaboration with the Native community that is impacted by the event. Concerns have been raised about things like spiritualism for profit, plastic shamanism, out of context references to tribal iconography, and the use of certain words like tribal and tribe. It's not only those in the Native community who have voiced concerns. It's easy to brush off the concerns, and it's easy to paint Native people as being overly sensitive or demanding too much political correctness. It's easy to paint over with the brush of we're all one, there's one God, and there's the relative and then there's the absolute. So on the absolute level, yes, we are all one. On the relative level, we're suffering deep pain and deep trauma as human beings on our journey. And so from that relative space, I completely lost my train of thought and my place on my paper. Yeah. Yes. Too much political correctness, yada, yada, yada. I'm going to tell you what that is. That's a display of power and privilege. So I'm not going to recount the horribly painful history that has imprinted trauma on the genetic memory of myself and my Native brothers and sisters. The people who are here have spoken to that better than I could, because I would just start to cry. But I will say that it's here, and it lives in my body as depression and as PTSD and anxiety, and I work compassionately with that in myself every day. Some of that, not all of it, is a pain so deep that I can't even put words on it. We as Native people have lost so much. So when the very last remnant of our identity as spiritual beings, the thing that reminds us of our basic goodness, when those things are treated as merely aesthetic or decorative or things to be sold and consumed, it hurts. Just because you may not personally feel the pain when these things happen doesn't mean that someone doesn't feel the pain. And although it's true we're not responsible for what other people feel, if we continue to walk around willfully ignoring our behavior and attitudes, and that they may be causing someone else to suffer, that's not very compassionate, aware, or enlightened. So for the benefit of all of us in this room, and for the benefit of the greater community of people who want to create a better, kinder world, I'd say we have some work to do together. And better late than never. Although it would have been nice to organize with each other sooner and form a collaboration that's inclusive of the Native community and their views, there's no better time than the present to start. What I would like to see and offer up are suggestions for concrete action to promote better engagement. If the local Native community feels it is appropriate, I would be honored to support this collaboration in coordination with others in the community who would be interested in doing the same. So here's some positive, concrete things you can do. Keep showing up. Hopefully this is the first meeting in a process. Create a better practices team. And this is what the document calls it, better practices team. People on your event team that can start working through better ways of engagement. Be willing and be flexible. Include an event team member to be a tribal liaison to work with the local Native community. Allow the Native community to be involved in whatever depth they choose to be, if they choose to be. And if the local Native community desires it, one thing that was very effective at Symbiosis was to include circles, talking circles for dialogue at the event regarding this process specifically in regards to this event. Invite the local Native community members to host appropriate workshops that highlight cultural appropriation, particularly in festival settings, healing from historic trauma, and whatever other creativity may arise out of this collaboration. And consider how your event can generate a tangible benefit for the local Native community. And lastly, stay soft, stay open, and be accountable.
If anybody would like to get information from Carmen Gonzalez, please see her afterwards. Also, if people didn't get a chance to speak but want their comments posted, please contact Fawn Douglas or myself. I have some cards I can pass out, but her email is nuwuart, N-U-W-U, art@gmail.com, and she's going to post everyone who didn't get a chance to speak because of our limited time, and I'll hand it over to her to wrap up.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank everybody for coming out tonight, and I'm very thankful for the matriarchs that are all here, and tribal members, and just the festival people for being open to this conversation. And it's tough. It hurts. And it's really hard to go through these processes, but I'm really glad that we all came here in this space, in this safe space, to have that and just work through it together. So I hope there are going to be, further conversations in the future, and I'm just really pleased with so many people who really genuinely care about this that showed up. I really didn't know how many people would be here, and this is a lot of our community, as far-reaching from Shibwoods, that's Utah, coming down here, from Peru, my sister, writing in, to say her piece. People care about this, and I just definitely want to keep the dialogue up. But thank you, everybody, and, we do have some foods. We were supposed to wrap up 15 minutes ago, but, everybody get something to eat, nourish yourselves, and we can always continue the conversation later. Thank you.
There's an event here next Thursday at 5:30. The following Thursday, 5:30, and at Palapa, our kids in Indian education need support also.
All right.